Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Julie Gunlock, you know how you see a Babylon Bee headline and you think, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? I want to steal it. And a lot of radio hosts do just steal them. I'm giving 100% attribution. Babylon Bee, latest headline, ISIS claims responsibility for Meghan Markle Netflix show. I love those guys. It's 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in to our morning extravaganza. We get you going the right way. And at 6:35, Cal Thomas will help us in that endeavor. At 7:05, Angela Morabito, former employee of the Education Department there, worked with Betsy DeVos. Now she's going to talk about what's next for that federal agency. And then at 8:05, Jim Hansen on what appears to be a ceasefire opportunity in Ukraine. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Morning.
Julie, have you actually watched all the episodes of the Meghan Markle show, or just the one? Or,
honestly, it is difficult. I have not. Because it's unbearable. It is absolutely unbearable. So, no, I've watched, I think, 2.5.
You broke one down on X, and it was hilarious, your dissection of that process. And then you floated the idea that we do some sort of listener event where you and Lindsay Feifeld and myself sit there.
We need to do that. So you can actually watch a show with your friends on Netflix. Yeah. This started during COVID. You do a viewing party. You do a viewing party. And I suggested we do a viewing party. Maybe someone puts so the viewers can listen to it as we're doing the, and then we do sort of, what's that,
like
sci-fi mystery science theater
MST3K.
So we still have to do that because it really is, I mean, not a second goes by that you can't make fun of it.
There needs to be alcohol involved.
Oh, are you kidding? Of course.
Immense. You can get a sponsorship. We'll see if the wine outlets are up for that. Joe Biden was president of the United States for 4 years, we're told, and he did quite a bit. And certainly on his way out the door, he pardoned a ton of people, including most of his family members. He also did these preemptive pardons, dating back to 2014. This person now has a pardon so that Donald Trump and the federal government can't really, they can investigate them, but there's no real repercussions for whatever they did. Now there's some suggestion as to whether Joe Biden himself actually did that or not. There's a use in Washington, especially in the executive branch, of what's called the Autopen. This has gone back for many years now, where it's basically, you can get the president's signature on a document without the president actually signing the document.
I've seen
it's
one.
It's a machine.
And senators all have them, House members,
And it's used if the president has to sign, this and all of these papers, all of these documents, all of these documents. Yeah. But you would think on things as important and critical as a pardon, a pardon for his son, a pardon for his family members, a pardon for Liz Cheney, a pardon for General Milley, that would be something that's sort of weighty. That's something that's sort of got some level of importance that Joe Biden would actually personally, single-handedly sign, and he did not. He did not. In fact, there's been an analysis here by the House Oversight Committee looking at the signature on all of these pardons, and they've created a stunning animation on social media that shows that all of those signatures, when laid on top of one another, are identical. It was like they've been put through a copy machine. They are obviously automated signatures, and it's one of those things where, here, sir, sign this, now sign this, now sign this, now sign this. The pardons are in question, certainly, but what about all of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we're learning that went to this agency or that agency in the final? This appears to be criminal activity, taking advantage of a mentally incapacitated individual with executive power that allowed him to wield it in such a way that not only delivered billions of dollars in what should, to all observers, be a corrupt and illegal fashion, but also the power of this pardon, to be able to deliver these pardons without actually knowing for sure that Joe Biden meant to do this. Now, I don't know what kind of repercussions there are. I don't know what oversight can do, but this is something that demands investigation.
It is real. It's going to be tough, though, Larry. I will tell you. I mean, Autopens are used in Washington. As I mentioned several times, I worked on the Hill. I worked for several members of the House and Senate, and I recall, for instance, in DeWine's and Senator Mike DeWine, now governor, but then Senator Mike DeWine's office, boy, it was a very serious thing to be able to work the Autopen, and it was guarded. But when you have to send out thousands of letters to your constituents, announcing something or responding to something, you're not going to expect the senator to sit there and sign 1,000 letters.
Sure.
So these things are used. I just don't. I can't. I feel like this is the kind of thing that the Autopen is deemed a signature from Biden, and sure, we can investigate it, but I just don't. I don't know that there can be reversals of that kind of stuff. I mean, again, I feel like the Autopen signature is Biden's signature. So yeah, it is horrible and unethical and probably criminal what happened. I can't imagine. I would imagine it's going to be difficult to sort of prove that it was done in a way that wasn't. I don't know.
Well, perhaps you're right, or maybe this will inspire some reforms in the executive or the use of Autopens in general. The Oversight Project, it's an initiative within the Conservative Heritage Foundation that looks into, investigates things like this. They went well beyond just the last-minute allocation of billions of dollars to agencies and to these pardons. They went back to executive orders that were signed like in the first couple of months of the Biden administration,
Wow.
and they too appear to be under the guise of the Autopen. In other words, whoever had control of the Autopen really ran the executive branch of our government. And I guess that's the question. So is there, and again, you've had some sort of experience with this, at least in the legislative branch, not the executive branch, but if you go and use the Autopen to sign a pardon, is there a log that shows who pushed the button, who authorized this?
I don't know.
Is there a chain of custody involved here?
Yeah.
Is there any way to know that?
I don't know, but I think we do know. I mean, we do know he was not in control. We do know these shadowy people were controlling the White House. We do know that, he would call a lid at 11. His office would call a lid at 11 o'clock. We know he was incapacitated. We know he was, as we affectionately said on the show, had mashed potatoes for brains. So, this is what happens when you have a president who isn't fully in control.
Speaker Johnson specifically recalled an incident where he was talking to the president about an issue, and the president was speaking as though he had not already signed an executive order regarding the issue. He was asking like it was something that was up for negotiation and that was open for debate, and perhaps I'll do this. And Speaker Johnson had to remind the President Biden, you've already signed an executive order on this. This is already the situation. This is already where we are right now. And Biden appeared to not realize that he had signed that executive order. I think we definitely need to look into this, especially when it comes to the pardons. And there should. I'm sorry. I know you're right. It quite possibly is going to be difficult to prove. It's going to be difficult to pursue. It needs to be pursued because ultimately, I want every Democrat in the House and in the Senate, and every Democrat who wants to run for president in 2028 to stand up in front of a camera and say, no. We're okay not knowing if Joe Biden really approved these pardons. We're okay with a forgery potentially being on these important critical actions.
Yeah, look,
let him go on record.
No, and it's interesting. I actually just texted my husband, who was one of the people who was allowed to use the Autopen, and I asked him, wasn't it locked up? And he said yes. So the Autopen for the senator was locked up. It was very, very serious to use the Autopen. And also, I just asked him if there was a log. Now, and my husband said no, there was not a log. So I think that that was the Senate. Who knows what a presidential signature carries more weight. But I do think it's worth investigating. And, I just want to say this really quickly. I know we're up against time. We sort of rely on good moral people staffing the president. I mean, they just were rotten. I have no doubt that perhaps there was some abuse of the Autopen, and maybe now we need reforms.
Wait, connected to Joe Biden? Rotten people, corrupt people? Connected to Joe Biden?
I know.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
When he says, I give you my word as a Biden, you know how far that goes. So that's your husband you're texting all the time during the show? That's interesting.
Well, not all the time. Stop.
When we check in with Jamie, it's 6:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives. Can you just text him real fast? Ask him if he's ever been to Berlin. Jamie Wittens in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL, making sense of the news.
Katie Porter, former congresswoman from Orange County, California, who made a ill-fated bid for U.S. Senate, lost in the primary to Adam Schiff, has now decided that she's going to run for governor. Wasn't she one of those, I just used to be a school teacher and a mom, and I wanted to serve.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Now she's like, now it's the family business. I'm going to run for whatever open seat there is, and now I can be governor. She's the one who went viral. And let's face it, I mean, usually when you're a member of Congress and you go viral, it has to do with chlamydia or something, or, some sort of...
Or dancing.
But then, those were the good old days.
Yes.
Now, if you go viral, it's because you've really spoken truth to power.
Well, look.
And stood up to Donald Trump and rode a bicycle near his motorcade and flipped him off.
Yeah, exactly. But Larry, she's also famous for, didn't she assault her husband with a pot of mashed potatoes?
Allegedly, she poured a pot of hot boiled potatoes over her husband's. Yeah. But, things come out in divorce cases, and who am I to throw stones?
Who hasn't thrown a pot of boiling potatoes at their husband? Right? Totally relatable.
She's really best known for sitting in congressional hearings and pulling out a little whiteboard.
Yes.
And drawing things. Let me explain it to you like you're a 5-year-old. Yep. And here... I'm just a mom, and I just want to explain these things because she's Katie Porter after all. Isn't she also the one who told her children that the earth was on fire?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Here's your bedtime story. Our planet is an inferno.
Yeah.
Sleep well.
Yeah. Chris Plant also often talks about how she essentially is abusing her children emotionally by telling them, you're all going to die at 25. It's terrible.
By the way, she's a former student of Senator Elizabeth Warren. I guess she took her Native American appreciation class there at Harvard. She said, I first ran for office to hold Trump accountable, and I feel the same call to serve now to stop him from hurting California. So in other words, she's running for governor of California to stop Donald Trump, which, I could be wrong. But for most voters in California, when they leave their house and look around, they might not be thinking to themselves, what our real problem is Donald Trump. Because I think they got some other issues there. And I could be wrong. Listen, trust me, no one has ever gone broke underestimating the wisdom of California voters. But I don't think she's going to have a chance if she makes the entire thing about him. That said, her biggest competition is the person who is not yet announced, which is Kamala Harris. And Lord knows that's what she'll make the race
I just don't understand this inability to find new blood, Larry. I mean, you've got Katie Porter, Gavin Newsom, possibly Kamala Harris, and then in New York you've got Andrew Cuomo. Can they think of no one else? Is there no one else? I mean, it's like Canada. After everything that's gone on in Canada, they elect a guy that's worse. I don't get it.
Hold on. You just gave me a great idea. You know who should run for governor of California. You talk about fresh blood. You talk about new faces. You talk about, I'm thinking Governor Nancy Pelosi. She's quite, what? She's not speaker
anymore. She's looking
anymore.
good with her cane and her,
She's just a backbencher. She's still got a chance.
Chomping on those dentures.
Let's go. Yeah. It's 6:22.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
I know there's a thing in the Constitution called the presentment clause, where a bill has to be presented to the president and he needs to sign it if he wants it and all that. Surely the president has to be in the room when an official government document is signed on his behalf, right?
I don't think so.
Sure. How is that not possible? How can you have this Autopen feature that just lets a pardon be signed without the president even being in the room when it happens? How do we know that he approved it?
We don't.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know.
Can we let's ask Cal Thomas.
Yeah, let's ask
Tell him
Cal.
about this.
I could be wrong.
Cal Thomas joins us now. Syndicated columnist extraordinary. We've got this new scandal now that apparently every document that bears Joe Biden's signature from his time in the White House was signed with the Autopen, including all of those pardons, Cal. And didn't Bill Clinton have an Autopen scandal at one point too? And I mean, especially considering President Biden's cognitive abilities or lack thereof, that this should be a pretty big deal that all of these things just went through with the push of a button by a staffer.
Well, when I think of Bill Clinton, I never think of the Autopen. I always think of a cigar for some reason, and I don't even smoke. But anyway, moving right along, I want to tell you a story about the Autopen. Now, Lyndon Johnson had a Autopen, but when he signed things himself, he distinguished it from the Autopen with a single dot at the end of his signature. And that's how you knew that LBJ actually signed legislation or a letter or something else. If it didn't have the dot, it was the Autopen. So there's a little piece of history for you.
Interesting.
Or herstory.
I love that. Well, this thing deserves some more scrutiny, and I'm sure it'll happen.
Well, he wasn't. He was not there for 4 years. Everybody knows that. It's one of the biggest cover-ups in history. The media are largely responsible for this. They wouldn't investigate it. And, shame on them. But there is no shame in Washington anymore. I mean,
no.
It's just terrible. Things go on. The media cover up things they don't like, and they promote even fiction like the Hunter Biden laptop. They cover that up, and just to promote their agenda. And the ratings continue to fall, and public trust continues to fall. But it's the only business of which I am aware that the people who own these newspapers and television networks don't seem to care.
No.
It's the most amazing thing.
And, Cal, they even profit. They lie. They mislead the American public. Then they profit off that lie and pretend that they didn't lie. A perfect example, Jake Tapper writing a book about Biden's cognitive decline. And he writes this book and he acts like he didn't know about it, which, of course, everyone knew.
Yeah. Well, there aren't no real journalists anymore, only a very few. I mean, when I started out in the business as a copy boy on Nebraska Avenue at NBC, everybody there had come from newspapers or wire services. They weren't activists. Yeah, they were probably Democrats, but they believed in fairness and both sides of a story, and they wrote their own stuff. None of them were blondes. No offense to any blondes, but they were just real journalists, and we don't have that anymore. We have people go on the revolving door between activism and a White House position. Look at the former press secretaries and people who used to be in the White House are all in these various networks, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, and this is one of the reasons the public doesn't trust so much of the business anymore.
I was speaking of Cal Thomas. Cal, we did get a vote yesterday. Boy, Mike Johnson, I have to say, you talk about herding cats. He's been able to herd them just enough. He passed a budget earlier this month, and then he got that continuing resolution through that allows for the government. I mean, I'm assuming the Senate will pass it, but sadly, you're not going to be able to cover another government shutdown in the near, at least not this week.
These things are so phony, as you know. We've seen this over and over again. First of all, there's not a real shutdown. And then, once again, the media go to the national parks, or they go to libraries, or they go to these crazy things that most people don't even go to. Oh, look, it's closed. Oh, my goodness, people are not going to get their Social Security checks. Oh, it's going to be Armageddon. Oh, they're going to shut down, all this and that. It's so phony. And, the Democrats have nothing. They want to shut it down. They think they're going to blame the Republicans. But how can they blame the Republicans if, as you say, the House has passed a measure? If they don't vote for it, then they're responsible for the so-called shutdown.
No, I'm sorry, you missed the memo. If Democrats are in power and there's a shutdown, it's Republicans' fault. If Republicans are in power and there's a shutdown, it's Republicans' fault. You know how this works, Cal.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just make a quick point about the economy, which I do in a column coming up, I think it's tomorrow. When I started investing in the stock market in 1983, I was barely a child, the Dow Jones Industrials were at 1,190. 1,190. This past Monday, despite the 1,000-point drop, the DJI closed at 41,911. So let's take the long view. Yeah. When Reagan came into office, it took 2 years to reverse the bad policies of Jimmy Carter, double-digit inflation, double-digit employment, and a mortgage rate of 16.64%. So let's not panic. Give Trump some time. He's on the right track. It's going to get turned around. This is America.
Hey, when the Dow was at 1,000, how much did you invest in that index fund?
Probably only about a couple of $100 because I wasn't making a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I mean, you held on to it. It's worth 40 times, but I can't do the math, but it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cal.
Yeah.
Great talking with you.
Okay, guys.
Well, some heartfelt congratulations to a friend of the program. You know, Rich Anderson, who for several years has been the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, and it's been a pretty good run for Rich Anderson, leading to a clean sweep of all three statewide offices during the gubernatorial race 4 years ago with Youngkin, Winsome Sears, and Jason Miyares, and quite a buildup of really, I remember first interviewing Rich Anderson after a tough defeat for Virginia one year, and he said, I'll make you this promise. We're not going to have any empty ballots anymore. There was a string there where Republicans, they couldn't even get a candidate to run for an option against some of these candidates. And he did better than that. Rich Anderson did a fine job, I think, as the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. And he is now moving on. I keep using past tense here because I should cut to the chase. President Donald Trump has named Rich Anderson to be the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force. That's a really great honor and a great gig, and he'll be very good at it. He, of course, a former state delegate. He served 30 years in the Air Force, retired from the Pentagon in 2009, and now he's going back to the Pentagon. That's good for him.
Yeah, he's done so much for Virginia. And again, you mentioned the three elected officials there. And, the only sad thing is we're going into a very important gubernatorial race in Virginia.
Yeah.
And we need his leadership, but I'm very happy for him. And we also need him at the, within the Pentagon. So, but, I hope we have a good, the replacement for Rich in the state of Virginia party, because he's done a wonderful job.
Yeah, he took over, by the way, right before the 2020 election in August of 2020. I think it's fair to say that the party had seen better days, and I think that he did a good job sort of resetting. I didn't know that he was a 30-year veteran of the military, but it makes sense because he had a systematic approach and really sort of started from the ground up, and the blocking and the tackling and the basics that you need to do to rebuild a party, which he had, was what he was facing.
And Rich is going to join Hung Cao, who's now the Undersecretary of the Navy. So a lot of Virginia talent heading over there, Larry.
But you'll remember, by the way, if just to walk down memory lane, last time. Chairman, you're the state chairman of a political party. You don't try to make news. You try to get results,
and you try
don't
to make
want your
news
name
for
in the papers.
your guys, that are running.
Right, exactly. It's about the candidates. But he did make news. You'll remember after the midterms of 22, or no, it was. Excuse me. It was the off-year elections of 23 when there. Huge hopes of Republicans winning back the majority in the state Senate and in the state House of Delegates, and the Republicans underperformed.
I know.
And I saw Ronna McDaniel the next night down at the debate in Miami.
That's right.
In the spin room. And I said to Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, what's your explanation for the failure of the party in Virginia? And she said, I offered money and help and support, but your guys in Virginia told me they didn't want any help. You remember this?
I do.
And the next day we got Rich Anderson on the phone, and here's listen, you got your party structure, and a lot of times you don't want to make waves, and Rich Anderson is a good guy, and he was a loyal Republican. So we got Anderson on the phone, and we said, Ronna McDaniel just told us that she offered money and help, and you told her no. And he said, that is not the fact. He said that is. I went a year ago to the RNC and told them our plan and told them this is what we need, this is the money we need, and we got nothing from them. So that was sort of the beginning of the end. Ronna McDaniel only lasted another 4 months, if I remember.
Yeah, it was it was that kind of dishonesty is just, there's no time for that. And yeah, she didn't last long after that.
Where is Ronna McDaniel these
I have
days?
no idea.
No. Things are going well, though, for the party. Rich Anderson,
yes.
We salute you. We congratulate you. You're going to be a great Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, but we are definitely going to miss you in Virginia, and we need you. So hopefully, I think you've set up a pretty good infrastructure. Hopefully, the new chairman, whoever it is, will join us here, talk about how they're going to take the ball and run with it, and bring the Republican Party a victory this November.